Hello, everyone. Charles Watts here. Welcome back to Inside Arsenal. It is Saturday. I hope the weekend is going well wherever you're watching or listening to this around the world. Thank you, as always, for joining me. I really do appreciate it. Going to be a pretty short one today. Not too much doing the rounds this morning. Anyway, certainly at the time of recording this, and I've got to head out in a minute because I'm heading to Legoland. Got the joys of Legoland Windsor to look forward to with my kids today. So just going to wrap this one up pretty quickly. Going to talk about Nico Williams, player, of course, we know is very much towards the top of Arsenal's list of potential targets this summer. He's been talking to Barcelona, Bayern Munich in recent weeks. It seems like that battle is really beginning to heat up. Maybe a bit of a hint from Yamin Lamau about where he could well be going. So we'll talk about that. We're going to talk about Jakub Kiwior, because I tell you what, I mentioned Kiwior and just a kind of throwaway comment yesterday about maybe what sort of money Arsenal might get for him this summer if he was to go, if he decided he wanted to go, and Arsenal sort of agreed to that. And loads of reaction from you guys in terms of disagreeing with me. So I thought I'd share that. I thought it was really, really interesting just how many people sort of jumped on that and valuation miles different to mine. So I thought that was really interesting. So we'll talk about that. Jack Wilshere has been speaking as well with a little bit of a warning about the striker situation at Arsenal. Got other questions and comments from you guys to get stuck into. But we'll start with Nico Williams, who, of course, I mean, we've spoken about so many times on this channel before. Arsenal's interested in him. Mikel Arteta really, really likes him. Wanted to get a deal done for him last summer. Wasn't able to. Remain very much high up on the list of Arsenal targets for this summer. We've kind of been waiting to find out whether he's going to leave Bilbao or not, what decision he is going to make again, like the one he made last summer. Bilbao, by all accounts, are quite keen to get him to sign a new contract, one that would drastically put his release clause up. At the moment, it's about £51 million, and a new deal that he would sign with Bilbao, if he decided to do that, would put that release clause far, far higher. But he has been talking to Bayern Munich of late, and yesterday he held talks with Barcelona. That has now been reported. So the battle for him appears to be really sort of heating up. And if you see, interesting, Lamine Yamal yesterday on the back of this meeting with Barcelona uploaded that picture of him and Nico Williams celebrating together on his Instagram, which of course everyone has jumped on as a sign that potentially Nico Williams is going to be joining him at Barcelona, which would be a pretty frightening prospect, having those two. Quite where Rafinha, I suppose Rafinha plays a striker in that. Well, he's got Lewandowski there. It's like, how on earth do you fit all those guys in? Not that it really matters. It's a hell of a lineup for them. But yeah, that's what's going on at the moment. Arsenal still very much interested in Nico Williams as far as I'm concerned. But the sort of the noise that you're beginning to hear seems to suggest that it might well be that they're quite a way down the pecking order if he does decide to leave Bilbao after these talks that he's having with all the interesting clubs. Of course, the wage bill is, the release clause isn't massive at £51 million, but the big sort of sticking point has always been those wages that he gets at Bilbao, which are incredibly high. That if Arsenal did decide to trigger that release clause and he did decide that he wanted to move, he would have to basically become almost pretty much Arsenal's top earner, or certainly one of the very top earners at Arsenal, which for a young, relatively unproven player would be an issue, I think. And that's why Arsenal have maybe there have been sort of complications of trying to get a deal like that over the line. But I still think if he'd have said yes last summer, I'm absolutely convinced Arsenal would have pushed the boat out and got him. But he didn't. He wanted to stay. And now, certainly going by the reports in Spain over the last 24 hours, that Nico Williams could well potentially be going to Barcelona. Not sure how they afford him with Barcelona's issue. I can't imagine how many financial levers they're going to have to pull to get that one over the line. But we shall see if that progresses or not. Right, let's talk about Jakub Kiwior now, shall we? Because this is really interesting. As I said, the sort of level of debate that my comment yesterday generated, I thought was very much worth discussing further today. I can't remember what the question was, but I was talking about Kiwior and how much Arsenal might potentially get for him. And I just thought maybe 20 million, that'd be more than what they paid for him. And given they've already paid off a couple of the sort of installments that they've done when they agreed the deal over his length of his contract, that they would still be making a profit on him. And loads of you have got in touch. I've got 2 pages of comments. I could have had about 5 pages of comments. But I thought I'd share this because I think it was really interesting, just to sort of the level of reaction that it's got. So somewhere at the top there says, is selling Kiwior a good idea? Wouldn't it make more sense to keep him, sense to give him and other centre-backs more game time, to reduce the over-reliance on Saliba and Gabby? Kwabe says, how can you sell Kiwior for £20 million? Kiwior replaced Gabriel and he was better defender than Saliba. Robinson says, Charles, don't you get it? Kiwior is not for sale. Imagine we didn't have him when Big Gabby was injured last season. Who is to bet anything that something like that will happen again? Classic Dan Smith says, sorry for the harsh words, but 20 million for Kiwior is a joke. He's an excellent player. He was part of our best ever runs of form in 2024 when he played left back. And then this season, he stepped in for Gabby and was even better than Saliba during that run. If Kiwior plays for any other club, he goes for 40 million. We shouldn't be accepting any less. London James says, annoying if Kiwior leaves. 20 million isn't enough to replace him. Zate says 50 million at least for Kiwior. James says the Kiwior deal is an interesting one. It reminds me a bit of the Willock sale. I didn't really want Willock to go at the time, but we sold him when his stock was at its highest, and now it looks like he could leave Newcastle. Kiwior could be the same. He did so well at the end of last season, but realistically, with Big Gabby fit, Kiwior goes back to the bench, so maybe it's time to move him on. That being said, I'm tired of being mugged off by lowball offers from other teams. There are rumours of Liverpool asking for 40 million for Kwanzaa, who barely played. We should absolutely be getting at least 30 for Kiwior. What are your thoughts? The Retro Grill says Kiwior is 50 million minimum. Aaron said, strongly disagree with your Kiwior price valuation. We have a player who is proven at the highest levels in the Champions League and Premier League's versatile, can play left centre-back, right centre-back, only 25 and a good character. Liverpool will get 25 million for a much less proven player in Van der Berg last summer. Anything beyond 30 million, and I'd rather give him a new contract and keep him. He could get more minutes next season after he proved himself last season. Hopefully Arteta learned his lesson and will rotate much more, which could motivate Kiwior to stay. So really, really interesting, I think. The sort of I wasn't expecting that sort of reaction from it. And I mean, absolutely get your point. My issue is, or where I think that something like 40 million might end up being unrealistic, is who wants him. And certainly from what I've seen, it's Italian clubs. Do Italian clubs have the money to go to sort of 40 million for someone like Jakub Kiwior? Not just the price either, but the wages, which is always the issue. It's when you're a set Premier League club, it's very, very hard to sell your players unless you sell into, one of the top clubs who can afford the wages. But if you're looking at someone like Kiwior and you're trying to sell him, or clubs are coming in for him, these clubs are trying to have him take on Premier League wages, as well as giving you a big transfer fee. They're trying to take on Premier League wages, which they find almost impossible to do, especially clubs in Italy at the moment. So the market would be pretty small, I think. I get what you're saying. And when you look at some of those players like Van den Berg, but the thing is, Van den Berg came through, he's just not on big wages. He's not on Premier League wages. Kiwior will be. He won't be on massive, but he'll be on still decent Premier League wages, which is an issue for some of those clubs. But someone like Van den Berg who's come through as a youngster will still be on relatively low ones. And those clubs who might then be able to afford a bigger transfer fee will also be able to take on his wages far easier. But I understand what you're saying. Mid-20s, Premier League experience, Champions League experience, shown he can handle it, experienced international as well. Ideally, you'd be wanting 40 million in current market, 30 million, 40 million, something like that in the current market. I just think, again, trying to be realistic, that it might be difficult for Arsenal to achieve that. But then, look, ideally, I wouldn't sell Kiwior this summer. Ideally, I'd just keep him. But I think it all just depends on him. If he turns around, which he might do, and decides with all this interest, I kind of want to go because I know next season I'm not going to be playing that much. I want to be playing week in, week out because that's what I think I'm good enough to do. And that's the age I'm at. Now, if he goes and says that to Arsenal, I think Arsenal would then have a decision to make. But ideally, he'll be happy to stay. And as who was it who pointed out here? I think it was Aaron, wasn't it? Saying Arteta hopefully has learned his lesson. Hopefully Arteta does do that and just does start to rotate a little bit more and gets more minutes into these players' legs, because I'd much rather Kiwior just stay than Arsenal having to then worry about selling him and then going out and finding a replacement in the summer where we all know the priority needs to be further up the pitch. But thank you everyone for getting in touch on that. I thought it was a really interesting point of debate. Right, before we move on to a couple more of your questions and comments now, Jack Wilshere has been talking. Jack Wilshere's sort of part of Soccer Aid, which is coming up here, a big festival of football with like former players, celebrities, all that sort of stuff, and to put on each year to raise a load of money for charity. Really good event over here, and Wilshere's part of that. And he was in the sort of pre-match stuff. He was talking yesterday at some in some of the PR stuff, and he was asked about Arsenal and the number 9, and I was like, is it that simple? And this kind of follows on from what I was talking about yesterday in response to someone who was asking about whether too much focus is on the 9 position. It's unfair to think that just assigning a striker means that Arsenal are going to win the league, which I agree with. I just think it's totally unrealistic to think that. It will help, no doubt about it. It will give us a much better chance. But if you're thinking, all right, that we sign a striker, we win the league, I think that's far too simplistic a view when you're talking about trying to win the Premier League. And Jack Wilshere kind of agrees. He was asked about it and said, is that as simple as it is, just signing a striker? And he says, no, it's not that simple. It's not as simple as that. We've seen over the years, a 9 helps, of course, someone to put the ball in the net, but everything else needs to happen around it as well. A 9 will definitely help, but it's not the answer to everything. I just really agree. And that's not me saying Arsenal don't need a 9, because I think some people were listening to the Arsenal Press Pass show that me and Sam and Cy did yesterday. And we're like, oh, you're saying we don't need 9, Kai Havertz is good enough. It's like, that's not what I'm saying at all. It's not what we're saying. I think every single person knows that Arsenal need a new number 9. That is so clear. But I just don't think it's as simple as like a new number 9 takes Arsenal and gets them over the line. I don't agree with that. They need more. So I'm saying another attacker, another left winger, another option like that, and a number 9 is so key this summer. It's not enough just to sign one player and think that's it. It's as simple as that. This is what's going to win us the title. Arsenal need to improve in more areas than that. It's like the focus shouldn't just, and it's not just on a 9, but even with fans, I just think that there's so much focus on this number 9 position being the sort of the be all and end all, when there's much more than that needs to be done in this squad, especially when you look at how other sort of rivals are strengthening at the moment this summer as well. So yeah, I thought it was good comments there from Jack Wilshere. Right, moving on to some questions and comments now. Scott and Matt have got in touch. Scott on YouTube and Matt on Patreon have asked kind of similar things about Andrea Berta. Scott says, hey, Charles, I'm away in Mallorca on a family holiday now. I'll keep an eye out for Berta. How are you feeling about Berta's start with us? I'm loving the way he's working so far. I liked Edu, but it felt like any time we did anything, he took a chance to get in front of the cameras. But Big Berta doesn't play that game. As a member of the press, he's keeping you all guessing on who we are getting. As a fan, it's class to see, but for your work, I say it's hard, man. It is definitely hard. I mean, none of us know Andrea Berta yet. After Edu being there a long time, there was sort of relationships there with Edu. You knew him, he knew you. That's not the case with Berta, and Berta very much works in the shadows. He's not someone who gives interviews. Edu gave interviews, and he would have given a lot more if given the opportunity. But he loved getting in front of a camera, and he loved talking. That's kind of what made him such a personable guy and made him so popular. And it was one of his key strengths when it comes to negotiating and stuff like that, because he had that aura about him. Berta's very, very different. As I said, he works in the shadows. He doesn't do interviews. You're not going to see quotes from him all over the place and all that sort of stuff. And him in front of the cameras, in front of a microphone, it's just not going to happen. So he does keep us guessing. And at the moment, obviously, he's very new. So there is no sort of, even in the background, sort of relationships there yet. I wouldn't be surprised if that continues for a long time. It's just the kind of guy he is. So how am I feeling about the start? I can only go with what people have been telling me who I've spoken to, who have had some dealings with Berta so far, and they're all very impressed. I think he's taken a really good firm grasp on negotiations, especially when it comes to contracts, and he's viewed as doing a decent job, and he's made a good impression, but we're still very, very early days, obviously, at the moment. Matt below says, hi, Charles. I'm reading a lot of reports about how Berta is talking to multiple agents at any one time, and it seems like he's across many different deals. This seems a different approach to Edu. What are your thoughts? Yeah, it is a different approach. I think it's a good approach. I kind of think it gives you're in a position to know exactly what the parameters are for multiple deals. So when you do sort of pull the trigger on one, if it doesn't work out, you know exactly what you have to do if you have to sort of move on to the next deal, if you see what I mean. So I think it is a good thing. But I think at one point that kind of needs to stop and a firm decision needs to be taken. And then you go for it and you get the deals done. So it's hard to really judge Berta yet. You've got to judge him at the end of this summer. As I said, the sort of noises I'm hearing from him about him are good. But the proof's in the pudding at the end of the day. When the transfer window closes on August, we're going to look at Arsenal's squad. We're going to look at what renewals have been done. And that's when we can really start to judge the sort of job, the early job that he's doing. So it's up to him to go and get these deals done. As Mikel Arteta said when he waved goodbye to us all at the end of last season, it's up to the guys upstairs now to do the job. And, a big part of that falls on Andrea Berta. So we'll judge him at the end of the summer. And Naples Gunner here asks, Charles, do we know when Takehiro Tomiyasu will be back from injury? I can't put a date on that. The hope is that he'll be back at the end of the year, so around sort of November time. But, this is a really difficult injury that he's coming back from. I don't think anyone's going to put a firm sort of timeline on it. He's certainly not going to be back for pre-season. Or last I heard, there was absolutely no chance he was going to be back for at the start of pre-season or the start of the season. It's very much sort of working towards the end of the year. So I just don't know if you can really factor Tomiyasu into next season at all. Hopefully we can. Hopefully he can come back and he can play his part in the second half of the season, because it would be massively useful. He's such a good player, can play in so many positions. It's just an absolute crying shame what's happening with Tomiyasu, because he's your dream squad player. There's very few players who can play to the quality that he can in every single position across the back line. He's just your dream player for a manager and for a squad at this sort of level. So it's just such a shame what's happening to him. But at the moment, I just don't think we can really factor him in to the equation. Hopefully he can come back. Hopefully he can start playing football again. But if that happens, then it's going to be much closer towards the end of the year, as far as I'm aware at this point, than it is towards the start of the season, if you see what I mean. So maybe second half of the season, but we'll have to wait and see on that. And that's it from me today. Like I said, I'm heading off now. I've got the joys of Legoland to run around and get pulled around by my kids, going on all these different rides as well. Got a bad back at the moment, so I'm not looking forward to it. But hey ho, the joys of being a parent. So enjoy the weekend, everyone. Thanks for joining me. Thanks for watching. If you haven't seen the Arsenal Press Pass show yesterday, which is usually only available to my Patreon members, I did put yesterday's show out available to all on the channel, so you can hear that. You can watch it on YouTube. You can listen to it on podcast. Get a little bit of a sense of what me and the guys talk about each week. And if you like what you hear, like what you see, and you want to sign up and become an Inside Arsenal Patreon member, then you can do that down below. It's in the description. You can find the link to it there. Just have to copy and paste it into your browser. Thanks for watching, everyone. Have a great weekend. Speak to you soon. Bye-bye.